In a shocking twist of fate caught on camera, a routine traffic stop in downtown Atlanta took an unexpected turn. Officer Jake Williams, a veteran of the force known for his by-the-book approach, pulled over an elderly African-American man for a minor traffic violation. What seemed like a routine arrest quickly escalated when the man, Mr. Clarence Johnson, calmly informed Officer Williams of his identity, a revelation that stunned everyone watching. As tensions rose, bystanders looked on in disbelief as Officer Williams hesitated, unsure how to proceed. Mr. Johnson, known locally as a retired schoolteacher, had never mentioned his former role as Georgia's esteemed governor. The unfolding drama left both men grappling with their roles, one as an enforcer of the law, the other as a symbol of authority. Stay tuned as we delve into the aftermath of this encounter, exploring its implications for race relations and the exercise of power in our community. As the crowd gathered, murmurs of confusion and disbelief rippled through the air. Clarence Johnson, wearing a weathered suit and a calm demeanor, stood silently as Officer Williams called for backup. "You've got the wrong guy," Clarence said firmly, his voice steady but not confrontational. Officer Williams, visibly tense, glanced back at him, clearly torn between his instincts and the man's composed confidence. Whispers spread among the onlookers, some recognizing the former governor from years past, others skeptical of his claim. How could someone so unassuming hold such a prestigious title? Meanwhile, Officer Williams wrestled with his training, protocol, and the growing realization that this wasn't an ordinary stop. The weight of the moment grew heavier with every second, as the tension between authority and truth hung in the air. Who was Clarence Johnson, really, and why hadn't he revealed his identity sooner? The answers would leave everyone stunned. As more officers arrived, the situation grew even more complicated. Clarence maintained his composure, his calm gaze never wavering, even as questions and accusations flew around him. Bystanders began recording on their phones, some demanding answers while others whispered doubts about the elderly man's claims. If he's the governor, why didn't he say so from the start? One voice questioned. Another chimed in. Why would a governor be walking around like an ordinary man? Officer Williams struggled to steady his nerves. Every move he made was being scrutinized, both by the crowd and his fellow officers. He couldn't shake the unease growing in his chest. What if Clarence was telling the truth? But why hadn't he presented any proof? Clarence, meanwhile, seemed to sense the officer's turmoil. "You have a job to do," he said, his voice steady but tinged with meaning. "But so do I." The mystery deepened. The tension in the air was almost unbearable as Officer Williams paced back and forth, his radio crackling with voices asking for updates. The crowd had grown larger, their phones pointed toward the scene, capturing every moment. Clarence remained calm, leaning slightly on his cane, watching the chaos unfold around him. "You're making a mistake," he said softly, but his words carried weight, almost as if he knew something everyone else didn't. Officer Williams hesitated, glancing down at the license and registration in his hand. The name matched, but there was still no definitive proof of Clarence's claim. Backup officers exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to believe. Meanwhile, someone in the crowd shouted, "Check the news. That man's who he says he is." Phones buzzed as bystanders frantically searched for confirmation. Officer Williams clenched his jaw, realizing the entire situation was spiraling out of control. This wasn't just about procedure anymore. It was about trust, truth, and the choices he would make in the next few moments. Just as Officer Williams began to second-guess his next move, a sleek black car pulled up to the scene, its tinted windows drawing immediate attention. The door opened, and a sharply dressed aide stepped out, exuding authority. Without hesitation, he walked straight to Clarence, extending his hand with a respectful nod. "Governor Johnson, we've been looking for you," he said, his voice calm but firm. The crowd gasped, the murmurs turning into an uproar. Officer Williams froze, his mind racing to process what was happening. Clarence gave a faint smile, then turned to the officer. "I told you, son, things aren't always what they seem," he said, his tone both kind and pointed. But before anyone could fully grasp the revelation, the aide leaned in and whispered something into Clarence's ear. His expression shifted subtly, an almost imperceptible flicker of concern, before he nodded. Whatever was happening, this was far from over. Clarence straightened up, his calm demeanor giving way to a quiet intensity. Turning back to Officer Williams, he extended his hand. "It's not too late to make this right," he said, his voice firm but understanding. Williams hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. Finally, with a deep breath, he handed Clarence his identification back. "I'm sorry, sir," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. Just as the tension began to ease, the aide stepped forward. "Governor, there's a situation at the Capitol," he said urgently. The crowd fell silent as Clarence's expression turned serious. "We need to go," the aide added, glancing toward the car. Without another word, Clarence nodded and moved toward the vehicle. As the car sped off, Williams stared after it, a mix of relief and unease in his eyes. He had done the right thing, or so he thought. Moments later, his radio crackled. "Officer Williams, we've got a report. It's about the governor." His blood ran cold. The voice continued, "He might not be who he claims to be." Officer Williams stood frozen, the weight of the radio message sinking in. He replayed every moment of the encounter in his mind, questioning everything he thought he knew. Who was Clarence Johnson really? Was he the governor he claimed to be, or something else entirely? The crowd had dispersed, but whispers about the mysterious man lingered. Later that night, Williams watched the news, hoping for answers. A breaking story revealed that the real Governor Johnson had been missing for days. Authorities were investigating, but no details were confirmed. The man in the suit, nowhere to be found. Williams sat back, realizing how close he had been to something far bigger than a traffic stop. He didn't know the whole truth, but one thing was certain. That day changed him forever, a reminder to question everything and trust his instincts.